Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back. I hope that your week is unfolding oh so beautifully, and we're very glad that you're here and with us. We got some interesting business to attend to today. Zooming in a minute, but here is just a quick preview. We got a new report from the CIA that has now been released to the public. This thing was just drafted not long ago, just at the end of June, and it is unveiling to us a lot about, oh man, this one here. It's unveiling to us a lot about what Joe Biden's CIA did back in the run-up to the 2016 election where Trump won his first term. We're going to go through this, man, because they basically made this whole thing up. Remember the Russia collusion, the Steele dossier, the prostitutes in Moscow and all that crap? Well, CIA was behind it. And just like they tried to rig 2020 and did rig it, we are seeing what they did even in the moments before that, in the cycle before. So we've got that report. It's a pretty big one. We see the New York Post talking about it, and even the CIA director, John Ratcliffe himself, who is going to be communicating about this with us today. Now, we're having a little bit of a screen switch problem, so let's just do this little situation over here, and then we'll be back. My technology is being very wonky at the moment, but it's gonna catch up with us. All right, so we've got that. We got CIA updates. We've got also to talk about this ridiculous opinion. Came out of the District of Columbia. An Obama judge called this guy Randolph Moss. Came out with this decision. It's 128 pages of disgusting judicial garbage. And we'll take a quick look at it. But ultimately, what he's ordering is that Trump essentially reverse his proclamation that made adjustments to asylum and all the other immigration things. And so we'll look at what the judge said on that one and then hear from Kristi Noem saying, you know what? We're going to continue to fill up Alligator Alcatraz and many more places if need be. So all that's coming up. Then we're waiting to get this order on the Diddy trial. So I do have some of that queued up. Diddy was filing a bunch of stuff to try to get out on bond today, to get out on bail, since he was just found not guilty on 3 of the 5 charges, and the most serious charges, not guilty for him. And so Diddy, of course, had some fans outside the courthouse, and they were celebrating. They were saying, "It's not Rico, it's Freako." Oh, yeah, and then I forgot. We had this lady queued up, too. Pretty sure there's no nipples in this scene, so hopefully that's okay for this channel. But they were putting baby oil all over each other out there outside the courthouse today, and the Diddy team was filing a bunch to try to get him out today, and the judge just denied that like moments ago. And so we're waiting for the order to hit on that one. But Diddy not getting out anytime soon, at least until sentencing, is what it's looking like. But we had a bunch of letters that got filed in. So the victims, attorneys, Diddy's team, the prosecutors were like, don't let him out. And so we'll hit the highlights on that. We'll see if we get that final order from the judge. And then, of course, see what you say about it all. Now, we're also keeping our eye on this congressional bill situation. And we've got, looks like 4 people left out to vote who have not voted yet. So Republicans at 216. This is just on the amendment now. So once they get past this, then they'll bring it back for a full vote. So that could happen maybe tonight, theoretically. So we'll keep our eye on that. We'll see what is happening over there. But lots of reaction and, of course, all happening quickly. So bunch of great stuff to get to today. Thanks for being here. Welcome to the channel if you're new here. We also have a great members-only community. If you haven't joined a members-only community, well, we'd love to invite you to join ours. We have a great community. We do live streams in the mornings. We do shows on Saturday. We have some of the best people on the entire internet in our community. And sometimes even Kim Jong-un comes in. So come join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com or on YouTube. Click the join button. It's a great way to support our work too. And we appreciate that. So, all right, my friends, let's get to business on the day because we've got this CIA ridiculousness that we're talking about. And here is the story. The CIA was involved in rigging another election against President Trump. We know what they did with the Hunter Biden laptop and how they facilitated that. But now we've got the new CIA director, John Ratcliffe, explaining this to us today. All the world can now see the truth. Brennan, Clapper, Comey, they manipulated intelligence and they silenced career professionals, all to get Trump. Now, thank you to the career CIA officers who released this report that we're going to read, who conducted this review and exposed the facts. And that's Brennan. You remember him right there, that guy. One of the worst. One of the same dudes who was saying, oh, the Hunter Biden laptop is a Russian, all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, and facilitating that through the CIA. We also have all those people who worked for Obama, and Obama knew all this was happening back in 2016. Now, the New York Post gave us the story on it, but we also have the actual document. So this came out from the CIA, a memo from the director, John Ratcliffe, and it is to, rather, the director from the deputy director, informing the director of what's happening. He says, all right, director. Now, in May 2025, the director of the CIA, the new CIA, John Ratcliffe, tasked the CIA's Directorate of Analysis, called the DA, to conduct a lessons learned review of the procedures and the analytic tradecraft employed in the highest classified version of the intelligence community assessment called the following: Russia's influence campaign targeting the 2016 election. Remember how much we heard about that? And then after Trump won, it was nonstop Trump-Russia collusion. There was even that song, Trump-Russia collusion. The review focused particular attention to the most debated judgment, which was then that President Putin aspired to help Trump. And so, drawing on CIA materials that were provided to congressional oversight investigations, the CIA Directorate of Analysis examined whether there were any procedural anomalies or whether there were any CIA tradecraft weaknesses that may have affected the soundness and the objectivity of this key judgment and the overall assessment. So, you came in, John Ratcliffe, new CIA. You said, can you look into this fake report back from 2016? There's something fishy about that. They said, yeah, we're going to do it, and we're here. And now we've got an update. So to understand the procedural and tradecraft issues that are identified in this review, it is essential to examine the politically charged environments and the unique circumstances that led to the development of this Trump-Russia report, the ICA. This came down late 2016. Now, during this period, there were conflicting public and private statements by the intelligence community officials about Russia's role in the U.S. presidential election, and it created confusion about the intelligence community's actual assessment, right? Everybody was talking different. Now, these contradictory messages prompted President Obama, who was still in charge at the time, on December 6th to direct then Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, the Clap, to conduct a comprehensive review of all available intelligence and provide your best assessment on Russia. Guess what happened before December 6th? Trump won, remember? So then Obama goes, oh crap, they're going to come in here? So how can we invalidate this? I know, Russia gave it to Trump. And then we can impeach him and dog his entire first term with a fake impeachment. Now, however, before work began on the assessment, media leaks suggested that the intelligence community had already reached definitive conclusions, and that created an anchoring bias, right? Like, oh, Putin stole this, clearly. Nobody could beat Hillary. So clearly the Russians did it by hacking her emails, remember? On December 9th, both the Washington Post and the New York Times, so Obama comes out on the 6th, he orders his henchman, Clapper, over at the DNI to go forward with this. Then the Washington Post and the New York Times, they both get leaks, reported that the intelligence community had concluded with high confidence that Russia had intervened specifically to help Trump win. They were the original election deniers, by the way, so don't ever let them get away with that. The Post cited an unnamed U.S. official described this as the IC's consensus view. Putin helped Trump win. No evidence of it, and they're instigating a conflict with a nuclear power who's a major power that is not even real. Okay, if you have a foreign government that's going to come in here and do something legitimately to try to rig your elections, isn't that pretty dang close to an act of war? Depending on how close they're getting. Now, I'm sure they're all doing it, and there is some level of this. So, like, you can't declare war against everybody who's trying to, get a little bit of an advantage in the election. But my point is Russia. And the recent election, and this one too, 2020, China. So this one's 16, 2020, China. And the tens of thousands of fake ballots that were cast, presumably, from their fake IDs that they came flooding in through our ports of entry. Strange. So the IC then is also rigging this. And by the way, this is the same scandal that they ran. Remember, we covered the Michael Sussman trial here, who was that Democrat operative who was working for Hillary Clinton, essentially, through the chain of command over there. Was it Perkins Coie at the time? I can't remember. But they were there at one of those firms, and Sussman was a Democrat operative, right, working for the Democrat legal team, and feeding stories to both sides, going to the media saying, hey, this is what I know, then going to the FBI saying, you better prosecute this before the media talks about it and ruins your case. And then they go to the media, say, you better report about this before the FBI opens up their case. And playing both sides. Meanwhile, the whole story's fake. Now, procedural concerns, the DA review, so the CIA directorate review identified multiple procedural anomalies in the preparation of the Trump-Russia collusion fake report. These included a highly compressed production timeline, because they needed something to smack Trump with, because he's coming into office in like a month. Hello. Stringent compartmentation, so nobody else could know what these little criminals are doing, and excessive involvement of agency heads. All of them cared about it a lot. All of which led to departures from standard practices. You're kidding. In drafting, coordinating, and in reviewing the Trump fake story. Now, these departures impeded efforts to apply rigorous tradecraft, particularly to the assessment's most contentious judgment. Now, let's talk about the timeline first. The highly compressed timeline was atypical for a formal intelligence community assessment. They ordinarily take months to prepare, especially for assessments of this length. There's complexity, political sensitivity, and the CIA's primary authors had less than a week to draft the assessment and less than 2 days to formally coordinate it with their peers before it entered the formal review process on December 20th. It is the same operation they ran with the Hunter laptop. They did the same thing, remember? They sent letters. They said we needed her like quickly to get this to Joe Biden so he had it for the debate, if you recall. And they raced it through. Now, we learned in the aftermath that Mike Morrell was one of the people who was facilitating this, and he admitted to Jim Jordan, I think, in Judiciary, that he did that so he could help Joe Biden specifically. He's like, no, I wanted him to win. So yeah, we helped him. And we thought there was evidence of it. So we wrote the letter. So what are you going to do? Nothing, Jim, is what Mike Morrell said. And he's absolutely right. So that conversation happened. And if you also remember, the CIA allowed them to use their facilities, and the CIA review board approved the process. All of it was fake, made up, again, to instigate another war with Russia, which is what they've been wanting forever. Even if they have to fake it, they don't care. Multiple intelligence community stakeholders said they felt jammed by the compressed timeline. Just shut up and get it done, okay? On the 20th, like, he's going to be here in a month. Do you have any idea? Trump's coming in a month. Most got their first look at the hard copy draft and the underlying sensitive reporting just before or at the only in-person coordination meeting that was held on December 19th to conduct a line-by-line review. Now, following the coordination meeting, redacted. Probably good stuff in there. So compressing review of the draft by multiple stakeholders to just a handful of days during a holiday week when everybody's trying to go on Christmas vacation. Nobody's paying attention to this. Like, what's in my email? Trump-Russia collusion? Okay, I don't know. Sure. Sign off on it. Also created numerous challenges as well. Now, this was further complicated by the needs to have the conduct and to conduct the review in hard copy. We can't just be sending this stuff around. Drafts having to be hand carried between various IC offices and buildings. And so they're racing these documents around, like in these secure briefcases, saying the pressing timeline and limitations likely biased the overall review and the process to focus more on precision of language and sourcing rather than on more substantial time-consuming edits to refine the overall presentation of the draft, which, with the benefit of hindsight, might have improved the augmentation in some areas. Now, one of the CIA's lead authors expressed surprise that the review process had resulted in so few changes. He says, well, this is unusual for such a lengthy, complex, and high-profile assessment. No changes to any of this? Mark Elias is like, no, just accept all on your Word document. The blankety blank all blanked out and then blanking and tried to blank the country. And so the question in this little box here, which looks like it's maybe a little bit of a tangent here, says, also, it's like in your textbooks, rush timeline justified? Question. The ICD 203, so probably some internal document of the CIA, it stipulates that analysis be independent of political consideration and must not be distorted by nor shaped for advocacy of a particular audience, agenda, or policy viewpoint. The election had concluded. That was done. The ICA was essentially a post-mortem analysis. So therefore, the rushed timeline to publish both the classified and the unclassified versions before the transition, right? If you're like, wait a minute, you're just analyzing whether something happened, or it seems like you might be trying to stop maybe the transition. Raised questions about a potential political motive behind the White House tasking in their timeline. Exactly, because they knew Daddy Trump was coming home, and they were like, oh, we have to stop this from happening. And you know, who knows what they thought this could go. Like whether maybe this was an attempt to stop the actual transition, if they could have maybe set up some pipe bombs somewhere. Without a clear operational need for urgency, this accelerated process created vulnerabilities and opened up lines of inquiries about bias, which was clearly there. Now, a more measured approach with expanded time, like if it's a post-mortem and you have to analyze it, you know, they're thinking that like the reason they're going so quickly is because they're trying, right? Why would you go so quickly if you're not trying to reach the end game, which is to prevent the transition? Now, they're not going to admit that. We'll see if this comes into this, but they're trying to instigate basically a coup, right? They're trying to invalidate the election. That's the end game, is to say the Russians stole it. And if they concede that and get enough people in the media to say that, then maybe you can have an invalidation of the election. So a more measured approach would have gotten wider input and would have adhered to the standard intelligence tradecraft practices and potentially deflected questions about White House motivations. And it's interesting. I mean, it's like, I thought the standard from the Democrats, remember in 2020 when they stole that one, remember they kept saying like, well, there's no widespread evidence of voter fraud. So be quiet. There was no stolen election. We didn't watch them change the election rules based on COVID. We didn't watch them change how they were collecting ballots and signatures and extending deadlines. We saw it all happen in real time, and we're commenting on that. Then they engineered, COVID on the in that context and suppressed in-person turnout, and we had tens of thousands of fake ballots. We had anomalies all over the country with water main breaks and all these different weird things happening. So we all saw it. Now, the question, of course, is what could they do this time, right? This was back in 2016 when they did the same thing. Back in 2020, they told us that we couldn't even question that at all. There was no widespread evidence. And they just made it on themselves, it sounds like, to launch their own inquiry, race it past the deadline, all with the intention of deviating the transition from happening. Now, as it continues, there were also compartmentation challenges. So there was a timeline compression, but they're also now separating people. You don't know this, you don't know this. Uneven access to highly compartmented information further complicated coordination and review and contributed to analytic differences on the most contentious point of this report. The product spanned multiple CIA blank compartments and included restricted access to FBI information, with some reporting even touching on U.S. persons who were involved. Multiple participants in the report had access to intelligence that others did not. These are all the Obama riggers who were trying to rig the election back then, rushing this report to invalidate the election. This restricted the author's ability to collaborate with a large pool of colleagues. Now, central to the judgment that Putin, quote, aspired, which is their fancy language. Like, what does that mean? Aspired. Okay. Did he help? Did he facilitate? Did he order? What does it mean? This is the same thing. Like, this is the same CIA technobabble as you can mirror 2020. They said all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. Well, are you saying it's Russian disinformation? No, not exactly, because that might be a war crime. It's actually something that has the hallmarks of it. Okay, very careful waffle language. Same thing here. Putin aspired. What does that mean? I'm sure he has lots of aspirations. But does that comport with election interference directed by a foreign power? No, it doesn't exactly, but it kind of hints that. So they say this was one highly classified CIA report. Central to this came from the CIA. Now, Brennan, Obama's crony and an anti-Trump maniac who we've seen all over the media, can't stop talking to Jen Psaki, had tightly restricted access to this information within the CIA. And it had been collected in July, but it had not been disseminated in CIA serialized reporting until the week of December 19th. So he goes in, he picks out something. He's like, well, all right, this says Russia in it. It talks about Putin in this one. So, all right, we'll use this one. So bring that one up. The CIA drafters had enjoyed privileged access to this information through participation in a highly compartmented analytic effort known as the fusion cell. Well, that sounds cool. We're part of the fusion cell. Whoa. Which Brennan had created in July to focus on the IC's growing concerns about Russia election interference. However, most contributors to the final report, coordinators and reviewers, were only read in to the sensitive reporting at the one meeting on December 19th. So Brennan is just holding it, shoves it all in their faces and says, this is it, take it. One CIA manager stated that uneven access to this compartmented information among the coordinators of the people compiling this report and reviewers contributed to an already chaotic process. And remember, they're racing this through. He said some key analysts and managers were not even cleared to review the most controversial aspects, like you can only read paragraph C, and were only capable of seeing portions of the draft out of context for national security, of course. So everybody would sign on to it and not even know what the allegations were. Now, broader access to the reporting, both prior to and throughout the preparation of the report, almost certainly would have led to a better and more analytic debate. Even within the small circle of collaborators cleared for the most sensitive information, the judgment that, quote, Putin, quote, aspired to help Trump win prompted healthy and protracted debate. People are like, what the heck does that even mean? Aspire? What is that? Including more voices with more time to weigh in undoubtedly would have refined and challenged this detail. Now, another blank report, I don't know, FBI, NSA, some three-letter agency, in 2017 indicated that the highest classified version of this report had been shared with more than 200 U.S. officials. Now, this is unusually high for such a highly compartmented product and calls into questions whether the extreme limitations on access to the underlying intelligence within the IC during the preparation was justifiable, right? So the question is, wait a minute. You couldn't let anybody see it before you released it. Now that you've released it, you said it's highly classified, right? Now you're sending it to everybody. Like everybody's just seeing everybody. Did you see this forward? Did you see this forward? So if it's so sensitive and dangerous, why are you sharing it around to everybody all of a sudden? Oh, because it's not. And so you hid it because it would have led to a different report by the time that you needed it. So there's also agency head involvement. They write, while agency heads sometimes review controversial analytic assessments before publication, their direct engagement in this development was highly unusual. Why were all these directors all coming in? This exceptional level of senior involvement likely influenced the participants, right? Everybody's like, oh crap, John Brennan's here. Altered normal review processes and ultimately compromised analytic rigor. Now, one CIA analytic manager involved in the process said that the other analytic managers, who would typically be part of the review chain, even opted out due to the politically charged environment and the atypical prominence of the agency leadership in the process. Wow. So some CIA people are like, all right, Brennan's here. I'm not touching this one with a 10-foot pole. I'm getting out. This is bad. Now, and then they all, stayed silent about it, of course. But from the outset, agency heads chose to marginalize the NIC, National Intelligence Council. They departed significantly from standard procedures for formal assessments. Typically, the NIC maintains control over drafting assignments, coordination, and review processes, and more. They're supposed to, go through and handle these things. But in his book, John Brennan, he wrote this book called Undaunted. Don't buy it. Brennan reveals that he established crucial elements of the process with the White House before the NIC involvement. Okay, so Brennan CIA is working with Obama to rig the story, bypassing the NIC, stating that he informed them that the CIA would take the lead drafting the report. This is our jurisdiction now because I'm John Brennan, saying that and our coordination would be limited to just a couple agencies, ODNI, CIA, FBI, and NSA, the agencies we control, not the NIC, which normally would handle a lot of this. It's like not an emergency, right? It's a post-after election. Okay, Russia tried to influence the election, but Trump won. Unless they're trying to reverse that outcome, which is obviously what they were doing. So these departures from standard procedure, and the reason why only the top heads were in it, because they're all going to come out, ODNI, CIA, FBI, NSA, and they learned their lesson, man, in 2016. That's why they changed their strategy in 2020, created January 6th to be the cleanup for the stolen election. These departures from standard procedure not only limited opportunities for coordination and thorough tradecraft review, but also resulted in the complete exclusion of key intelligence agencies from the process. Now, while sensitive counterintelligence information in community assessments often requires restricted access, the decision to entirely shut out the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the Department of State's Bureau of Intelligence and Research from any participation in such a high-profile assessment about an adversary's plans and their intentions was a significant deviation from how we normally handle these things. It was also markedly unconventional to have agency heads review and sign off on a draft before it was even submitted to the NIC for review. The NIC did not receive or even see a final draft until just hours before the report was due to be published. These people are such criminals, man. They did the same thing with the Hunter laptop. Raced it through the CIA publication board. Like, sure, stamp it. You're good. Published. Joe Biden's debating tomorrow. Get it out. In an email exchange on December 20th, then DD CIA Deputy Director David Cohen told John Brennan the following: redacted, redacted, redacted. And according to Cohen, redacted, redacted, redacted. Now, John Brennan downplayed the concern. He responded to Cohen that the big three, referring to the CIA, FBI, and NSA, have every right to agree on language that will be included verbatim in the final version of the paper. So he's like, actually, these other agencies are saying some other things. Cohen told Brennan, bro, you're wrong. This report's crap. You're crap. This sucks. Brennan says, well, whatever. If these other agencies have a problem with the language, they can agree or not. Whatever. We're not changing the language to put in your concerns. They can agree or not. Acknowledging that the NIC would still have a right to differ. If they want to write their own report, they can do it. But I very much hope that doesn't happen. It's like, what? How are they going to disagree? You haven't given them any access to anything, so they can't see anything, John, which of course is what he knew. So we also see that there was also a prejudicial workforce message. One business day before the intelligence community analysts convened for the only coordination session on this fake report, hack John Brennan sent a note to the CIA workforce stating that he had met with the DNI and the FBI director and that there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our recent election. Sick, man. So, okay, so this is the director of the CIA, right? Sending a letter to all of the employees, notifying them, we have already decided this, and I don't want to hear any challenges to our final conclusion. While officers involved in drafting this consistently said they did not feel pressured to reach specific conclusions, this was premature signaling that agency heads had already reached a consensus on this before the report was even coordinated, and the goal was to silence dissent, to stifle analytic debate, obviously. So the decision by agency heads to include the Steele dossier, fake Russia PP hoax garbage, in the report ran counter to fundamental tradecraft principles and ultimately undermined the credibility of a key judgment. The authors first learned of the dossier and the FBI's leadership on its insistence on its inclusion on December 20th, the same day the largely coordinated draft was entering the review process at the CIA, right? So now the FBI's funneling stuff and rigging that, and this stuff came in from Hillary Clinton's campaign. Mark Elias, Michael Sussman, and their Democrat law firms were funneling information to the FBI. FBI was taking it up to the CIA. CIA was using it to create a premise to invalidate the election. Now, they weren't successful that time, so they revised their plans and they stole the next one. But FBI leadership made it clear that their participation in this report hinged on the dossier's inclusion. FBI, you put this fake report in there, or else we're not signing off on it. And over the next few days, repeatedly pushed to weave references to it throughout the main body of the report. And it was all made up. The ICA authors and multiple senior CIA managers, including 2 senior leaders of the CIA Mission Center responsible for Russia, strongly opposed including the dossier. They said, what? Where'd this come from? They asserted it did not even meet the most basic of tradecraft standards at all. In fact, the CIA's Deputy Director for Analysis, DDA, he warned in an email. He sent it to John Brennan on December 29th. He said, John, if you include this dossier in any form, you're risking the credibility of the entire paper because this thing is so ridiculous. It was so embarrassing. Trump's going to get urinated on by prostitutes in a hotel in Moscow or whatever the basis was. Are you ridiculous? It's ridiculous. The idea, I mean, it's like worse than a Ketanji Brown dissent. It's totally unbelievable. Totally not credible at all. Now, despite these objections, Brennan showed a preference for narrative consistency. Brennan's like, well, I really want that in there because it makes him look bad. And that's the entire point of this. And we're trying to steal the election. So when confronted with specific flaws in the dossier by 2 mission center leaders, your report is wrong, here's why. One with extensive operational experience and the other with a strong analytic background, Brennan, he appeared more swayed by the dossier's general conformity with existing theories by than any legitimate tradecraft concern. So Brennan's like, well, so what if it's just a little bit, outside the ordinary? It feels true, Brennan ultimately formalized his position in writing. Yeah, exactly. He believes it. My bottom line is that I believe that the information warrants inclusion in the report. Literally, he just believed, well, I just want it in there. That's why. Okay. Well, we've got all these procedures at the CIA to make sure that our stuff is validated. We have like a process, like due process to vet and validate information. Like if you're testing blood at a DUI case, it was a process. You extract it, you impound it, you seal it, you crimp it, you do all these things before you test it. You don't have some guy on the side of the road who's like, give me your vein here. You put it in a little pool shaker, Okay, yeah, you drunk. There's standards, right? That result would be invalid. You can't test alcohol that way, but you get the point. It would be invalid. There's a process that you have to go through. And Brennan skips over all of it. He's shaking the blood outside the cop car. Now, ultimately, because he feels like you're drunk, feels like we should stop Trump. In truth, he's just trying to steal an election. Now, ultimately, agency heads decided to include a 2-page summary of the Steele PP tape and an annex to the ICA. So kind of attach it with a disclaimer that the material was not used to reach our analytic conclusions. However, by placing a reference to the annex material in the main body of the ICA as the fourth supporting bullet for the judgment that Putin, quote, aspired to help Trump, they smuggled it in. Everybody said, wait a minute, it's the fourth bullet point. What is it? Oh, Trump urine? What is this? Unsubstantiations were elevated and it compromised the entire document and the judgment of the people who wrote it. Now, the procedural anomalies, the CIA report continues explaining, the procedural anomalies that characterized the development of this report had a direct impact on the tradecraft that was actually applied to its most contentious filing. And finding, with analysts operating under severe time constraints like get this done or else, limited information, you can only look at these paragraphs, and heightened senior level scrutiny with Brennan telling everybody this is the result. Several aspects of tradecraft rigor were compromised, particularly in supporting the judgment that Putin, quote, aspired to help Trump win, which is, again, it's a weasel word. Strong tradecraft examples. They say, even with the benefit of hindsight, the CIA's review found much of this tradecraft to be robust and consistent with our analytic standards, which is the primary guiding document. Now, the assessment's rigor was evident. It had extensive sourcing. There were 173 separate reports, and there were 74 citations from open sources. So the report did have some robustness to it. As we're cited here. Now, the report also demonstrated strong adherence to tradecraft standards through frequent use of attributive language, explicit identifications of intelligence gaps, and clear statements of confidence levels. This level of analytic rigor exceeded that of most assessments, right? So in other words, there were some parts of this that were quite good. Now, while the review identified specific procedural and tradecraft issues with the one judgment, these issues should not be interpreted as indicative of a broader systemic problem in the IC's analytic processes or standards, okay? So just because these guys screwed this up doesn't mean that we regularly screw this up, okay? There were problems with this one situation here, but don't extrapolate that to all the things that we're doing, okay? Most of our work's good. The DA review identified, though, multiple specific concerns, including a higher confidence level than was justified about any of this material, insufficient exploration of alternative scenarios, lack of transparency on source uncertainty, uneven argumentation, and the inclusion of an entirely unsubstantiated Steele dossier, which was made up by Hillary. Now, the aspired judgment on this word did not merit the high confidence level that the CIA and FBI said. Now, as explained in their annex, they said, quote, high confidence generally indicates that judgments are based on high quality information from multiple sources. So we know Putin tried to steal it. They also emphasized only one highly classified CIA serialized report to actually support this judgment. Okay. So they know that if you're going to say you've got high confidence, you've got corroboration on it. You've got multiple sources who are coming in and saying, oh, that's absolutely true. It's good. They didn't do that. They just went to one report, highly classified, that nobody could see. In the ICA's first draft that was reviewed at the December 19th meeting, the authors had included the, quote, aspired judgment. Putin aspired to help Trump. In a broader finding on all three assessed goals, with respect to the first two goals, which is undermining public faith in the democratic process, which the CIA has done. Putin couldn't have done it better. I mean, the CIA wrecked it. Nobody trusts the CIA or the FBI any longer. Some people do, I guess, but not many. Denigrating Secretary Clinton to harm her potential presidency. They were trying to stop Hillary. The finding was underpinned by multiple high-quality sources in those first two goals. Now, all meeting participants were comfortable with saying, okay, high confidence for those. Sure, the Russians want to say your elections suck, ours are better. Sure, they want to say Hillary Clinton sucks, when she comes in office, that's fine too. So that's all normal. So they said, sure, that's high confidence. Yeah, Russia has those goals. But did Putin aspire to help Trump? However, NSA and a few other participants were not comfortable ascribing a high confidence to the, quote, aspired judgment from Putin. They cited the limited source base, lack of corroborating intelligence, the possibility for an alternative judgment, saying this makes us pretty uncomfortable, so we can't sign off on this. So as a result, the authors agreed to separate out the aspired judgment. The NSA eventually settled on ascribing it as a moderate confidence level, which is defined as information is credibly sourced and plausible, but not corroborated sufficiently. Okay, so a little bit lower. Leave that aside. Now, the ICA did not highlight outlier reporting or present alternative scenarios, although someone else found that this happened and this happened. No alternative scenarios were even identified or explored. So there was clearly an alternative scenario right there, but they didn't look into it because it would have undermined what they wanted the outcome to be. No alternative scenarios were identified, even explored, due in part to the highly compressed timeline. There was no time. When asked how any additional time would have affected the quality of the report, the people probably working on the report said, oh, it would have been much better. In one instance, the authors cited part of a highly credible outsourced source report that supported the high confidence assessment of the first two goals of Putin. One, undermining the democratic process, the two, denigrating Hillary, but omitted information that conflicted with the aspired judgment, right? So maybe the guy said, actually, Putin and the government has nothing to do with it. It's just kind of other people in Russia or something. They left that part out. The omitted information, as well as a small body of other credibly sourced reporting, was also not cited, actually suggested Putin was more ambivalent about which candidate won the election. He didn't care. He wasn't trying to do anything to help one or the other. I don't really care. And they sent that in, and they're like, well, keep that out. He has to help Trump. The ICA would have benefited from including that report, Doing so would have shown that analysts were aware of it and that they had considered multiple scenarios, but they didn't want to. Even if analysts ultimately concluded the larger body of reporting was more compelling, analysts could have strengthened their argument by showing their analytic homework more methodically. Now, there's also a problem with source transparency. The CIA review that analyzed this report does not dispute the quality and credibility of the highly classified CIA report that the authors relied on to drive the aspired judgment. Consistent with our standard scope and sourcing note, the classified version is a holistic assessment of the strengths and weaknesses, and we analyze which sources were most important in the judgments. Now, however, given the centrality of this single report to the aspired judgment, so the reliance on that one report, the report was good. It sounds like the report was pretty good. It was high standards and there's some good credibility to it, but you should have more clearly addressed the other uncertainties with how the cited information on Putin's intention were acquired. So it sounds like the people are kind of perverting the report. We see this a lot in law, in case law. Like one side will say one case means one thing, the other side will say the case means an entirely different thing. Here, they're saying, well, this report we're interpreting to mean Trump-Russia collusion. But they just kind of, skimmed out of it and weren't clear with it. Now, the placement of a key clause in the serialized report also left room for differing interpretations, adding another element of ambiguity. Referring to the clause, a senior CIA operations officer said, "We don't know what was meant by that." And 5 people read it 5 ways. Wild. And of course, you're like, well, we're reading it that Putin gave it to Trump. The DA review examined the underlying raw intelligence and confirmed that the clause was accurately represented in the original report and that the interpretation of its meaning was consistent with the raw intelligence. So actually, they didn't pervert that one, it sounds like, in this new report. Their interpretation of its meaning was most consistent with the raw intelligence. Okay, so I guess that's not a problem. Now, in intelligence analysis, presenting a judgment effectively and logically requires clarity, structure, and a robust foundation. Without the highly classified CIA report, the aspired judgment essentially rested on an assessment of public behavior of senior Russian officials and state-controlled media and on logic. Now, most analysts judged that denigrating Hillary equaled supporting Trump. They reasoned that in a two-person race, the trade-off was zero-sum. Okay, well, if they don't like Hillary, then they must like Trump. So they said, okay, that's great. But that was an inference, right? That's not actually the truth. Maybe he doesn't like Hillary and he also doesn't like Trump. But they didn't say that. They said if he doesn't like Hillary, then he must support Trump. So once the Aspire judgment was separated from the other two findings on Putin's intentions, it struggled to stand on its own. And as noted earlier, the subsequent decision to bolster this judgment by referencing only the unsubstantiated Steele material further weakened the analytic foundation of the claim. This raised the question of whether Aspire, quote, was even needed, as its inclusion risked distracting the readers from a more well-documented finding on Putin's strategic objectives. Now, the risks of including weakly supported judgments are also well known to analysts who are trained that readers, especially skeptical ones, may reject an entire analysis if a single judgment appears biased or unsupported. Yeah. This is particularly true in high-stakes contexts like election interference, where any political sensitivity is going to amplify scrutiny, and that did here. The two senior leaders of the CIA Mission Center responsible for the Russia argued jointly against including the Aspire judgment. In fact, in an email to John Brennan on December 30th, they stated the judgment should be removed. It was both weakly supported and it was unnecessary. And given the strength and the logic of the paper's other findings on intent, we got to get rid of it. They said if you include it, it's going to open up a line of very politicized inquiry. But he didn't care. He needed to steal an election. So they give us some lessons learned. They tell us the review of the 2016 report revealed how departures from established processes can establish and, in effect, sound analysis. Now, while the overall assessment was deemed defensible, the identified procedural anomalies in tradecraft issues highlight critical lessons for handling controversial or politically charged topics. Critical lessons. Do you mean indictments? Adhering to established analytic processes and rigorous tradecraft is essential to ensure credibility, objectivity, and accuracy. Yeah. It's like, guys, your report was, you turned it in an hour late. That's not what happened. Particularly when time pressure, sensitive information, and high-level attention might compromise standard practices. It was an operation that was conducted by the agency heads, dictated by Obama. They're going to put in some platitudes here. We're going to adhere to rigorous tradecraft. It was an intelligence operation. You just explained it. Timeline. Rapid assessments often are necessary, but sacrificing analytic rigor just so you can go fast makes it a credibility problem. We need more time, so just slow down next time when you're trying to steal an election, okay? Don't do it so quickly. Uneven access to compartmented information also makes it hard. You should share your Drive file folders with your colleagues so they can access your files, you know. Otherwise, no one will know when you're trying to steal elections together. Agency head involvement. Excessive micromanagement by the election riggers can intimidate analysts. So the next time you're going to steal an election, please have a more transparent process, okay? Also, confidence levels. Alternative analysis, you get the point of it. They write here, the DA routinely conducts internal after-action reviews. These are crucial tools to figure out what to do about all this. Now, the CIA will apply these lessons learned to continue to drive improvements. Okay. The CIA took multiple steps leading up to 2024 to minimize or avoid the sort of problems that they faced in 2016. We communicated clear expectations and guidelines. We ensured consistent access to designated analysts. We established appropriate parameters and more. What a joke. All right, so not going to be any indictments, it sounds like, but we know what they did. It was an intelligence operation, just like they did in 2020. They are enemies of democracy. They claim to be the ones defending democracy. Meanwhile, they're taking orders from Barack Obama to go in and start investigating a fake Russia collusion narrative in the final hours. John Brennan goes into his closet. It's like, oh, here's a Russian story. Bring that out. Hillary was also already trying to concoct that to steal the election. And so we had this disgusting collusion, really, between the CIA, the FBI, the Hillary Clinton campaign, the Democratic Party, and a bunch of lib lawyers out there. Now they're all getting busted. And we appreciate John Brennan releasing this report and explaining this. I hope there's a lot more that comes from this, because these people, man, and they just protect each other. It's like the CIA is like, rip these people, man. Say John Brennan and Clapper and all these people dropped way below the ethical standards and that they're partisan hacks. It's like, well, they just worked quickly and they just didn't analyze things and they forgot to share their copy and paste, CC their friends on the investigation. It's like, come on, man. All right, so nice to see it. Sunlight is a good disinfectant, and I'm sure John Brennan not having a good day today, and hopefully the investigation into their criminality continues. All right, so good updates there. Now let's talk about this other judge who's just terrible. An Obama judge is now the president of the border. He is reversing Trump's proclamation and his executive orders to say, reopen asylum, let the invasion continue, because Raymond Daniel Moss is now running things down there. And this came out of the District of Columbia, of course. Where else would it come from? We've got Barack Obama appointed this dude back in 2014. And he dropped this opinion today. And it is essentially reversing Trump's border policies in a broad swath. And just like we talked about previously here on this channel, when we read through the CASA Supreme Court decision where Ketanji, wait for it, Brown Jackson, full stop, released one of the most ridiculous and embarrassing legal dissents in American history. We read that case, and in that one, Judge Alito came down and said, you know what's going to happen next? Class action certification for the entire planet. You're all protected now because I, the judge, say so. And this judge wrote 128 pages. We'll hit the highlights on this just so you can see what's happening. Trump, of course, is going to appeal this immediately. But this is the type of insanity that we're dealing with. And the Supreme Court could have dealt with this too. Judge Alito was warning about it. Here's what this judge wrote. You know, on January 20th, Trump issued a proclamation, which is amazing, declaring that the current situation at the border is an invasion. The sheer number of aliens entering the U.S. has overwhelmed the system. True. And it's preventing the federal government from operational control of the border. Judge writes, the proclamation, in effect, prevents anyone who crosses the southern border, as well as anyone who enters anywhere else, from applying for asylum or withholding of removal. That's right, Judge. That's exactly right, because we elected the president to do that. It's a beautiful thing. Now, on Trump's telling, because what has happened here is Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services. Okay, so some probably nonprofit, NGO, grifting illegal alien front group, suing and now has more rights and privileges than any American citizens do. So on Trump's telling, this dramatic step was necessary to restore order. The immigration system has been overrun. Now on the other telling from the illegals, the proclamation says, this is ridiculous. The president can't rewrite the nation's immigration laws. And so they say the proclamation, the judge tells us, contains 5 operative sections. First and second operate together. Third section relies on 2 other sources of authority. The fourth section does not rely on any statutory authority, but it's invoking the Constitution. And this 5th section invokes other provisions as well. Now, the gangbangers or the illegals, I'm not sure exactly who they are or what they're coming from. Oh yeah, they're fleeing persecution. We know. They're all getting their papooses attacked everywhere across the planet. So these people are 13 people. AM, ZA, TA, AT, NS, DG. If you get any legal process in your life, your name is out there in the public record. But the judges protect the illegal aliens because they're better than us. And 3 nonprofit organizations. Here you go. Las Americas, Immigrant Advocacy Center, and the Florence Immigrant and Refugee Rights Project. Hopefully they're all investigated too, for facilitating the invasion. The 13 individual plaintiffs, all of whom are or were subject to the proclamation, have allegedly suffered past persecution. And we know what this persecution entails. Pupusa attacks in El Salvador. Gay barbers who don't like to get looked at in Guatemala when they're going to the grocery store. We read that in his letter. He's like, oh, people look at me weird. It's like, what are you wearing, bro? They allege that they have fled persecution from all over the world. We're responsible for everybody. Afghanistan, Ecuador, Cuba, Egypt, Brazil, Turkey, Peru. Some of these plaintiffs have already been removed, or as the defendants call it, repatriated. So they're already gone. Some of them. The individual plaintiffs now seek to proceed individually. They also want a class, right? A putative class, so that everybody who were, are, or will be subject to the proclamation are covered. The three organizational plaintiffs also, so the three illegal front groups that provide legal services to individuals seeking asylum, are also a party to this. Now, the 15 defendants are all the Trump administration, including Trump, the president, 3 cabinet officials, the entire immigration division, ICE, immigration, customs and immigration services, all of them being sued. Now, they allege that the proclamation is unlawful. It's a dramatic break with decades of executive branch precedent. Yeah, and that's the point. That's why we wanted Trump to win. To use the executive branch to enforce the actual law. The fact that the prior hack presidents that we've had didn't do that doesn't mean that what Trump did is dramatic. It might be a dramatic break, but it's not like, oh, it's illegal. It's dramatic to you. But it's what we wanted. It's not dramatic to us. It's exactly what we expected. Among other things, they allege that the proclamation and its implementation override immigration law, and that violates the asylum statute, which gives aliens who are physically here the right to apply for asylum. They broke into our country and they say that your laws allow us to claim asylum, and you not giving us that opportunity is a violation of your laws, right? This is the democracy so-called exploit. This is how foreign invaders come in and they use our Constitution against us to impose their values, which are unconstitutional, using our own system against us. Been happening in spades for a while now. Now, most fundamentally, they say that the authorities that Trump invokes in support of this proclamation do not authorize Trump's actions. And they say the APA also protects them as well. Now, we're also going to see that they also want a class certification. And this is what I wanted to take a look at in the context of the Supreme Court case. They say their motion is for a preliminary injunction. We know the Supreme Court just said you can't issue nationwide injunctions except for very good reasons, which the court consolidated with the motion for preliminary relief. Now, given the time-sensitive nature of the challenges to impending repatriations and removals and the difficult questions that the court is facing, we're going to address those plaintiffs who are a party to this lawsuit and putative class members who are currently in the United States in this decision, and will, after providing an opportunity, address those claims of those who've already been removed. Okay, so this judge is exploiting literally the loophole that Judge Alito called out last week, saying, right now, we're just going to certify all the people as a class. So I'm not going to issue a nationwide injunction. That's crazy. The Supreme Court said I can't do that. That's okay, though. I will issue an injunction for the parties to this case, and the parties to this case, everybody across the whole country. It is just a sneaky loophole. Okay, it's against the Supreme Court didn't say this exactly, right? That he can't do this, but they said that this type of stuff should not be done, which is why they stopped the preliminary injunction. And now the judge is just kind of ignoring the Supreme Court without really doing it, right? It's like mom said, you can't have cookies before dinner. And you're like, all right, that's no problem at all. I'm just going to go have some cake. Your mom's like, what? That's what this judge is doing. He's shoving his face with cake. Now, for the reasons that follow, the court concludes that neither the INA nor the Constitution says Trump can do this. He can't replace comprehensive rules and procedures set forth by the law and the governing regulations. He can't remove people without an opportunity to apply for asylum or withholding of removal or any of these things. And so the court recognizes that the executive branch faces enormous challenges in dealing with a backlog of asylum cases, but the law says that the sole and exclusive means for those present is already something you have to follow under the law. And so the court will grant their motion for summary judgment and grant the motion to certify a class. And so they're now a full class action for gangbangers or illegal aliens. I don't know how they got into our country or what the status is because we don't even know who they are. But we'll defer rulings on later, and we're going to direct that you submit a joint status report for further briefing for those who are not in the United States any further. And so the judge is going to go into a big, long screed about this, but no doubt Trump will appeal this. Of course, Kristi Noem and Tom Homan and the rest of them are going to fight back on this decision that came out from a District of Columbia judge who is violating the spirit of the law when it comes to the Supreme Court's mandate last week that they're not supposed to take control of the executive using the law to do it. It's outside of the tradition and the history of the United States. Amy Coney Barrett gave us a nice breakdown, I think, on that one. But anyways, good stuff. I'm sure we'll be coming down. This judge right now taking over the presidency, and Kristi Noem is out there talking about what's coming next, saying Alligator Alcatraz might be a good model for the whole world.
Ranged individuals that other countries released out of their prisons, out of their mental institutions, and sent them to America to roam on our streets and perpetuate violence against our citizens. President Trump is just trying to follow through on what he promised the American people, and that's to get the worst of this worst out of this country so that they can raise their children in safety and apply the law equally to everyone, bring justice back to America, secure our border, but also get these dangerous criminals out. And I'm just so proud of him. This facility down in Florida is what I think should be the model for every single state. Go out there and help us partner to provide an opportunity to detain these individuals, to process them under due process, and get them out of our country as fast as possible. These kind of partnerships can happen everywhere. We just need governors and leaders to step up and do their jobs.
All right. Now, apparently this order has also been stayed for about 2 weeks. And so Trump will be appealing this, no doubt about it. And will have some time to do it. The court will direct the parties, and I think the court will postpone the effective date of its class-wide order for 14 days so they can seek a stay pending appeal, and otherwise they'll enter in their judgment. So Trump, I'm sure, will be appealing it. We'll keep our eye on this one. Another lunatic judge from D.C. taking over the presidency, even though the Supreme Court just said, stop acting like spoiled brats. They didn't get the memo. At least Randy Moss didn't get the memo. And so we'll keep our eye on this one. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, my friends. Now, we got one final segment on the day, and that includes this scene, which is just outstanding. So here's what's happening outside of the Diddy case. Not guilty verdicts for some of the most serious charges brought against Diddy. Still 2 guilty verdicts, but not on the RICO charge, which was, I thought, always a questionable charge, even though Diddy is a disgusting and perverted and very likely criminal, now a convicted criminal, according to jurors on 2 counts. He still did not get the convictions on the big ones. And so now he's fighting to get out of custody. The judge today just denied him release, saying that he's going to be a flight risk, and we're waiting for the order to drop from the judge. But I got the letters queued up of the final filings, and Diddy was asking and demanding that he be released today. That did not happen, obviously. And other people who were parties to the case also jumped in on this, saying, don't release Diddy. It's going to be a big problem. But the scene outside the courthouse was wild. Apparently, Diddy had a bunch of fans out there saying, outside the courtroom, it's not Rico, it's Freako outside the courthouse, which is an interesting chant.
Now, outside of the courthouse, you don't have the marshals regulating the behavior. You don't have the marshals upholding that prim and proper and etiquette that is happening inside of a courtroom. No, instead, I kid you not, people are pouring baby oil on one another outside this courthouse. Baby oil having a very big play in the Freakoffs we heard about. You had people saying it's not Rico, it's Freako. You've got applause coming when the mother of Sean Diddy Combs, Miss Janice, got out of the vehicle just a few moments ago, really, behind us and walked inside to elated cheers and her greeting the crowd. Every time the family, the children, the 6 adult children come in, 3 boys and 3 girls, they are met by cheers. Now,
all right, so lots of people enjoying the Freakoff stuff, and they were even dropping baby oil on each other. This dude, Matt Levietes, he's a reporter for NBC News. He said, Combs supporters are spraying baby oil on each other outside of the courthouse. Yeah, this was happening. All right, that's enough. This is a family show. All right, so that's what was going on out there. A freak-off outside the courthouse. Golly. So now the question was, can Diddy get out of custody? We all remember Steve Sadow, the amazing defense attorney representing Trump in Fannyland, Georgia, says, for those of you following the Diddy trial, the federal sentencing guidelines for the 2 offenses of conviction are a base level of 14 and combined a probably offense level of 16, which is sentencing range 20 to 27 months. The guidelines are advisory and not mandatory. But if the judge is not letting him out today, he might be looking at a prison sentence, and that's where the judge might be leaning on this. But as Diddy was trying to get out of custody, several letters were sent in. We had 2 of them come from Diddy himself. The first one was this one right here. It said, hey, we don't think that Diddy is a flight risk or anything like that. And then they sent actually another letter, which dropped right here. And this was a follow-up to the first level and the first letter. They said this to the judge as the day was coming to a close. Your Honor, Diddy should be released on bail today. For months, the government repeatedly argued and announced to the world that Diddy was a monster who perpetrated a 20-year federal crime spree through a racketeering enterprise. It devoted enormous resources to this case. Then, after almost a year in detention, Combs finally got his day in court, and the allegations were tested by a jury of his peers. And that jury heard the government's evidence, including testimony from former girlfriends. And by its verdict, the jury resoundingly rejected the government's depiction of Diddy, the jury finding him not guilty of racketeering and not guilty of trafficking. It convicted him only on 2 counts, which were related to the transportation of adults. Adults whom the jury clearly found were consensual participants. Now, the offenses here are of a far less serious nature. Prostitution offenses are no longer even prosecuted as a matter of policy in the Manhattan DA's office. And for as gross as what you think Diddy, did, and we heard some of it here, if in other words, if Diddy is, if you're prosecuting people for transportation, like flying people on airplanes to go and engage in these things, that standard, I would argue, is being violated every single day. And they make a volitional decision in many U.S. attorneys' offices to not bring those cases. So those charges alone wouldn't have been brought. Now, it would be unjust to continue detaining Combs even one day longer, especially since, given the sentencing guidelines, he would otherwise be entitled to serve additional time at even a lower security facility. Now, we write to respond to the government's arguments opposing bail. First, Combs was not convicted of a crime of violence at all, and the court should therefore consider his bail application under these provisions and not the ones they want. And the government also overstates his sentencing exposure. And third, the court should release him on the proposed conditions because there are exceptional reasons why detention would not be appropriate. There was no crime of violence here. The government is incorrect to say that this was a crime of violence. says this one involves minor that they're referencing, but this is not a minor. None of these people were minors. They're adults. Apply to Mr. Combs' bail request and those not maintained under the law. And also, crime of violence was amended in 1998. And it says minors, but these were adults, so it doesn't count. So crime of violence is also inconsistent with the judiciary reports. And these other chapters provide another case in point. Knowingly transporting any individual for activity of a sexual variety is what that is. And this is not that. This is prostitution only. This is nothing involving minors. And so that does not count. And also, Maureen Comey, James Comey's daughter, who also handled the Ghislaine Maxwell trial and also didn't find any other criminals in that entire operation other than Ghislaine for facilitating individual minors for being for the use of sexual exploitation. None of that apparently was trafficked to anybody, only Ghislaine. She was just transporting them to herself or to Epstein or something. And then all of that was forgotten. And I'm still of the mindset, I think if you put on the conspiracy hat on this case, there was something much broader than this. Like, this was the Biden FBI raiding Diddy to get compromat on some bad people. They thought Diddy had compromat on Trump, or they needed to get Diddy's compromat on Melania or on, let's say, Obama's kids, Sasha and the other one, or something, right? To go reclaim some bad evidence or to go obtain some bad evidence against someone who's an enemy of yours or whatever. And it just turned into a prosecution and they got their hands on the goods and that was the end of it. Now, on this basis, it claims that 3 levels are added. And so you're just prosecuting him too aggressively. Now, the government's arguments that 2 points should be added for obstruction are also meritless. And so you should let him out. Mr. Combs has exceptional circumstances here. 18-year-old twin daughters, 27-year-old son with no living parent. Combs' mother's 85. Mama Diddy. She suffers from various health conditions, heart surgery, brain surgery. Combs has a 3-year-old child. Combs served almost 11 months already in bad conditions, and so let him out. Now, there was a lot of opposition to that, as we can see in this letter. This one came out from Douglas Wigdor. Says, we write as counsel for Cassandra Ventura to request that Combs not be released. We think detention is mandatory post-conviction, and Miss Ventura believes Combs is going to pose a danger to her and to the victims who testified in this case, including herself as well as to the community. And there was another letter that also came out from Deontay Nash. Sent this one in. Dear Judge, please don't let Diddy out. Writing, I am writing to express my grave concern over the prospect of Sean Combs being released from custody. While I appreciate the fairness you've shown throughout this proceeding, I feel compelled to be unequivocal about the danger Diddy poses to the public and to the individuals who have risked everything by coming forward. Now, he has a long, well-documented history of violent, coercive, and retaliatory behavior. Over the years, he's repeatedly escaped meaningful accountability, and each time reinforces his sense of impunity. If he's released now, I have no doubt he's going to see it as another license to continue intimidating, threatening, and harming people. Many of us have firsthand knowledge of the fear he instills. I can say without hesitation, he's a serious and immediate threat to victims, pattern of violence, unchecked substance abuse, and more. And so, without any substantial consequence, his wealth and influence is going to prove that can shield someone indefinitely from accountability. And so I urge you in strongest possible terms to prioritize the safety and the victims of the witnesses, the safety of victims and witnesses over any consideration of leniency for Diddy. Mr. Combs has had countless opportunities to change. He's not doing that. Thank you for your time and commitment to this. Respectfully, Deontay Nash. And so we know the judge has denied bail as of today. We're waiting for a new sentencing date and more. The proceeding was held for the trial. Transcripts are now live, more letters, and that's the case. So Diddy, not guilty on 3 of the 5, guilty on 2. The 2 counts were for essentially transportation for prostitution, which are relatively minor on the scale of the allegations. And so now Diddy supporters are celebrating out there it's baby oil and Freakoff season out there. So we'll see what Diddy does. I'm sure he'll be appealing a lot of this. And I think that those charges, if they were by themselves, they would not have been brought against him. They needed to charge him with RICO so that they could extend this big net over the case and talk about a bunch of other things like the hotel and all of the various misdemeanors and all of the various bad things that would have been maybe felonies that expired because they're so old. They brought that in as evidence. And I think the defense is going to say they overlapped way too much stuff and they should have kept some stuff out, and they'll find something to appeal on, and we'll see what happens next. But Diddy coming to a close on that one. So thanks for joining us today, my friends. It has been a beautiful stream. And if you're just getting here, quick recap. In fact, before we do that, let's see where we're at with the big, beautiful bill. Here's the latest in Congress.
$5 trillion
from C-SPAN.
And boy, I'm telling you.
Boy.
Republicans met their mark and turned the American people into their mark.
Okay, I don't know what that means, but all right, so I guess we're still waiting on stuff in the House. C-SPAN might be a late night over there. Lots of happenings behind the scenes. And we'll, of course, keep our eye on it. But if you're just joining us, we talked about some good stuff today. We had a very nice report dropped by the CIA from the new CIA director, John Ratcliffe, explaining just how corrupt the FBI and the CIA were when they tried to steal Trump's victory from under him after the 2016 win against Hillary Clinton. Great report, lots of details. Very happy to see it coming out. I know a lot of this stuff we've talked about and had hints of, but this is now officially from the CIA, okay? They said that they did this. And the conclusion, of course, is a joke. Like, the CIA is not going to go after their own CIA people. It's kind of like that blue coat of silence that cops have. But we know what they did. And we hope that there is further inquiry on this. We should have a select committee and haul John Brennan in here to testify about it. Then we talked about this judge, an Obama appointee, Randolph Moss, judge from the District of Columbia, who now says he is opening the border again. Trump had no right to declare an invasion or to cut off asylum or to do any of those things. Joe Biden could make all those changes, but Trump can't do it because, democracy. And issued an order saying Trump has to reverse all those policies. Trump, of course, has 2 weeks on this to appeal it. We know that he will. And as soon as those docs drop, we'll keep our eye on it. And then lastly, we had a little bit of a Diddy update. It's wild out there. Freakoff baby oil season right outside the courthouse. Diddy wants to get out of custody. Judge said no. We'll see if that changes anytime soon. Otherwise, he'll be waiting in there until sentencing. And if the judge is not letting him out now, he might be looking at a prison term. So we'll see, my friends. But it has been a beautiful stream today. We're keeping our eye on the House to see if Trump gets a big, beautiful bill on his desk. The clock is ticking on that one. July 4th, just days away, and we're excited for that too. But now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. And thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting our work. Thanks for joining us on this lovely Wednesday. I hope your week is unfolding beautifully and you're accomplishing everything you set your mind to. We've got some good comments in the House, and I appreciate your support. Thank you for supporting our work here and making it possible to spend this time together. We got new membos coming in too. Oh my goodness, my goodness. Star Spangled Banner too, huh? Yes, we got Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, my friends. And thank you, Donut and John, for clipping for us this afternoon. Carrie B and K Bean from this morning. We got Will Crump is here. When are these judges ever going to face consequences for defying SCOTUS? It seems universal injunctions continue unabated. Essentially, it's the same effect. Yeah, except they just called it something differently. They like to change labels. Like, oh no, it's a class action now. Like, it's an injunction. It's a nationwide injunction. No, it's a class action. No, it's not. We can see it. And it's disgusting. So stop calling it something that it isn't. Mad Nana, what's up? Mad Nana, thank you for becoming a membo. Grab the members only stream from this morning and join us on the next membo stream. We got Sev Russ. Hey, what's up, Sev Russ? Thank you for bringing in 5 new membo friends. We got Ann Cleary, welcome. Chalky, 81. Andrew Davis, Filtered is here. Nana, 1776, all joining us courtesy of Sev Russ. Thank you, Sev, for bringing in 5 new membos. We're grateful for it. We got Doan. Hey, good cover on Brennan, Rob. Long overdue. Thank you for that, Doan. Yeah, I know you've been following that one for a while, but you're exactly right. It is good to see it. It's really nice to see it courtesy of the CIA. That was a nice thing. And so good news on that. Doan, Bongino has to stick close to his book, Spygate, and cash his anchor to government gangsters, or they're going to lose all credibility. It's all true anyways. Yeah, I know. We're still waiting on Cash and Dan. Yeah, thank you, Doan. Hey, Jeffrey Adams, charge Brennan and Clapper, and they will roll on Obama at all so fast your head will spin. They are weak, spineless cowards. I think that's true. Yeah, I think they are weak and spineless and cowardly, which is why they operate in the shadows like that, like in the gutters to try to rig elections and then preach to us about democracy and America, as they tried to steal multiple elections and successfully did steal one, and just lecture the rest of us constantly. Jeffrey Adams, hey, I got the crown thing. Number 1, Jeffrey Adams. Amazing. Thank you for being number 1 in our chat tonight. Tanya Hammock. What's up, Tanya Hammock? Thank you, Tanya, for becoming a membo. Membos, grab the morning stream. We had a great members-only stream this morning. Tons of fun. Ravicus, in the next couple of days, please listen to this again to remember how great the story really is about the Star-Spangled Banner. This one written over here by Mona Rose. Star-Spangled Banner, as you never heard it. Looks like a great suggestion. Thank you for that, Ravicus. Force coming up. We love our country, baby. Waldo, what's up, Waldo? Found you. Brought in Blue Nose Bob, 1872. Welcome aboard, Blue Nose Bob. We appreciate you. Hey, Tim Jake is here. I think Tim is our former DOD analyst from yesterday. What's up, Tim? Welcome aboard. You're now number 1. Shout out. Says, referencing the CIA document, ICD is Intelligence Community Directive. ICD 203 is Analytic Tradecraft Standards. Boom. So kind of like the Justice Department manual. Thank you, Tim, for being here and for educating us on how this stuff works. Tim was here yesterday also explaining some lingo. And I think, was it Grassley's emails? We were looking at the emails from the FBI. It's nice to have a resident former analyst bringing us some deets. Thank you for that, Tim Jake. We appreciate you. Hey, Doan, proper definition means nothing if you own the press. Yeah, I think that's right, Doan. They just said, we'll just clean this up on the other end of it. We can just say whatever we want because most of the CIA is embedded in the media too, like Anderson Cooper and those guys. Like, come on. Or Sean Hannity. Come on, Sean. Wasn't he wearing the CIA pin, that one show? Like, what are you doing? Are you CIA? Ravicus, remember, you are the militia. You are the Minuteman. Well, we're all American citizens, and if we're called to serve and defend our country, we'll do it. Mizzy M, I remember following the Crossfire Hurricane conspiracy. It sounded like a crazy story at the time, but I believed it. It was a different time in history. With trust, people had the government and the alphabet agencies, and it was only 6 or 7 years ago. We've come a long way with the understanding who runs the government since then. I credit Trump 100% for that. No one else would have had the smarts and the cojones to stand up to the corruption. Yeah, Trump is a force of nature, and the people who can't admit that are just delusional, so you could just disregard their opinion about anything. Like there's a group of people like, Trump's just an idiot, bumbled his way into the presidency. What? He beat the entire Republican Party, then beat Hillary Clinton, then beat Joe Biden, and then had January 6th hung around his neck like an albatross. Then he comes back and wins again, and you're like, you still don't get it? It's like, accident. Idiots. But yeah, I think Trump, in many ways, became a lightning rod that drew out all of the opponents, kind of a thing. So when he stood up, you got to see like the full apparatus of both parties spring into action to attack him. And in doing so, they revealed themselves, and we all got to see their true form for the first time in our lives. And it was a nice thing to be revealed to us. Mock Schnell, what's up? Thank you, Mock Schnell, for bringing in 20 new Membo friends. Hello, Kidden is here. Zach Bennett, what's up? Ken Phillips, Pat Hacker, Chinny Win. Bruce Little, Don Hastings. We got Mr. E is here. Willie D, Caleb Hokett, Metal Jake, Jay Alberto, Mama Suri, Deb Smith, Kay Stanford, Max Deplorable, Ungoliant, Space Baby, Sue Silver, and Mrs. Hayes in the house, courtesy of Mock Schnell. 20 new members. Thank you, Mock Schnell, for bringing them in. We got this one from I'm an American Man. Says Obama Llama Ding Dong. Yeah, what was that? Was that a Rush Limbaugh? But I think he was parodying that from someone else. Did Biden say that? Obama Llama Ding Dong, somebody like that? Yeah, hey, it's the Munkets. Tony Hay Munkets bringing in 20 new members. Thank you, Tony Hay, for doing this. Welcome 20 new friends. What's up, Sean Lively, Lily Smith, Ken Schuerman. We got Craig Shank. Terry's here. JP's Constructions Adventure. We got David Coburn, Scott Vincent, Emnigem, Chad Parsons, MMO Mox, Susie Bonham, Broey's here. Hex Sailing, Voiced, NY Renal, welcome. Philip C. We got Live in Grace, Trauma ICU RN, and Dave. Gifted members courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets in the house. Thank you, Tony Hay, and welcome 20 new friends. We got Will Crump. Welcome, Will. Glad to have you as a member. I think that's a welcome back. Great to have you. Molly Wright, what's up? Brennan, Clinton, and the others need to go to Gitmo. I'm so sick and tired of them getting away with their crimes. I know, Molly, isn't it a little bit frustrating when you read all of that? You read this, it's 8 pages of garbage from the CIA and the FBI colluding, clearly colluding. And in conclusion, they say, we're just going to not rush things next time. And we're going to coordinate and have a standardized list now. So we're going to make a spreadsheet and we're going to track all of our activities so that we don't try to accidentally steal elections again with oversight. Things are going to be a lot more consistent now. And we're going to establish appropriate parameters and clear protocols for our proper production of reports next time. Great. So you're not going to do anything, is what you're saying, is I think what they're saying, Molly. Thank you for the nice dono. Yeah, it would be nice if there were repercussions for this. Gitmo's a fine place, too. They're remodeling it, too. Richard White. Any way we can put the corrupt CIA officials and rogue judges in a hotel room with Diddy? I don't know, man. They might already have done that. You never know. You see, Diddy might be, an intelligence asset or intelligence adjacent. My thesis on the Diddy thing has long been that Epstein was the honeypot for the tech bros, the academics, and the billionaire class. Kind of like, he gobbled up a lot of compromise on those guys. Diddy was the same thing for the media, music, and movie industry. So that's why they needed to tax him too. Just like out of that scene in Training Day, right? Where they taxed that dude. Yeah, they had to go tax Diddy because they needed to get something in his floorboards. Ravicus. I'm a direct descendant to Pierre Paquette. Well, shout out to Pierre. 1796, Columbia County, Wisconsin, October 1836. Pierre Paquette was a trader, scout, and interpreter who worked at the portage of Fox and Wisconsin rivers. Paquette was half Indian. He was known for his fluency in French, English, and several Indian languages. He often served as an interpreter during the treaty negotiations in the 1820s and 1830s. That's incredible, Ravicus. What an awesome history that is. Shout out to our Pierre Paquette heirs and lineage. Ravicus, thanks for sharing that with us. How cool. Doan, the Nunez memo is a good reading on Spygate. I don't know if we ever, a lot of that was before we were live streaming or even doing content. But yeah, I have seen bits of that. I don't think we read it on the channel here, but yeah, it's true. The Nunez memo, he busted a lot of it. We might have actually read that. Hey, Will Crump, can Trump legally ignore the judge in wake of the SCOTUS ruling? Can Trump go straight to SCOTUS? Will SCOTUS let this defiance stand? So Trump, I don't think that, no, I don't think that legally you could say that he could. And that, only the Supreme Court can tell him what to do, if you wanted to make that argument. We have seen the Trump practice. So, can he, the answer is he could. What's the Supreme Court going to do about it? The question is about will he and what are the political consequences of it? And is there a political limitation that would prevent him from doing that? And so far, Trump has not done that. Trump has been ruthlessly compliant with the courts and abiding and obeying. We even got Kilmer back physically in the United States, if you want to go that far. So he's not ignoring the courts. And I think that's a smarter political play because he's just waiting on it, goes up to the Supreme Court and he wins anyways. So can he go straight to SCOTUS? He could. Will SCOTUS let this defiance stand? Probably. Yeah, probably. They'll probably make it go back up the same chain of command that the permanent national injunction process went through too. So thank you, Will, for the good questions. Rob, what's up? Okay, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax investigation was just a $50 to $55 million grift. This is including secondary investigations, court costs. People were pocketing taxpayer money, all to go get Trump. And why? So in federal law, it says asylum must be applied for within 1 year of entering the U.S. Biden and Obama had often waived this. Trump must enforce this provision. Yeah, exactly. We saw that in the Kilmer case too. Kilmer wanted asylum, but they're like, no, bro, you've been here for 10 years. Like, you got to file that within your first year. You can't do it now. So you're barred by that. Chubby, I'd love for the garbage this judge is pulling to finally get Roberts and SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, to bring down the hammer. But we all know that SCOTUS does the absolute minimum they need to in every case that comes before them. Yeah, they could have addressed this, but they didn't. Alito called it out. He's, I'm warning you, and here we go. It's like been less than a week. They've already done it. Will Crump, until judges are impeached, nothing changes. And the Supreme Court, I think, could come back down with a hammer and tighten a lot of this stuff up. But, you know, justice delayed is justice denied. We're having our presidency stolen from us by the judges. King of Biltong is here. You know where to get the Biltong, baby. BiltongUSA.com. You can use code Robert, 10% off over there. High proteins, low carbs, air dried, bold, and savory, courtesy of King of Biltong, the king of the Biltong. What's up, Richard White? Judge Moss messed up, right? This opens the door for Supreme Court precedent limiting class actions. It could turn Rule 23 on its head. And we didn't spend a lot of time on this dumb decision, but did he do, I mean, it's 128 pages. So like, let's see in the, sorry for all the scrolling. What's his class certification? How much time does he spend on it? 103 to about 112. So like, is he even going through all of the proper factors? Numerosity, practicality, commonality, and typicality, adequacy, these requisites. He'll go through them. And as the court explained, with one modification, they're entitled to proceed on behalf of the proposed class. And so we're going to certify a class. That's his analysis right there on it. And so the court will appoint counsel to represent the class. And it sets forth the prerequisite, numerosity. Okay, so he does do some analysis on the element, like second and third requirements. And they disagree, saying the class is overbroad. But these are expedited removals for the entire class. And so, yeah, he's certifying it. That's what these judges are doing. We're going to see what happens with the Supreme Court on this, but I'm sure Trump will appeal it. I'm sure that's going to drop tomorrow. We might have that tomorrow on the show. Thank you for the dono, Richard White. We appreciate you being a membo too. Cardinal O'Flanagan. Why do judicial orders where the courts simply don't have jurisdiction even stand at all? Yeah, it's a great question, right? So that's kind of back up to Will Crump's question about, well, does Trump have to follow it? You can make the argument that they don't have jurisdiction over the entire class of people across the nation. It's essentially an injunction by a different name. Can they just make up anything, an order, and it stands until and if the appellate court or SCOTUS steps in? Yeah, that's basically right, Cardinal. So the example of this would be Boasberg. Remember, Boasberg said, well, even if my injunction was unlawful, which it was, you still had to comply with it until it was found to be unlawful. And because you didn't do that, now I'm going to hold you in contempt. And he still has that case, even though the Supreme Court said your injunction was illegal. So, in other words, judges and courts can hang on to consequences for violating an order, even if the order is illegal. And why? By the way, on the West Coast, we have miles of desert in the middle of nowhere. No power, no Wi-Fi, no place to protest or obstruct from. Trump needs to build a camp on the West Coast, put up tents. We don't have gators, but we also don't have hurricanes. You know, we got some pretty gnarly desert creatures too. We got rattlesnakes, we've got scorpions, we've got mean, javelina are pretty vicious too. And they multiply a lot. And they get big too. And ferocious, man. They'll eat cactuses and stuff. Like cacti. They're crazy. So, bobcats. We could have a pretty gnarly desert. And, by the way, have you ever, brushed across a cholla cactus and seen what happens to your body on those? And saguaros everywhere? Pfft, brutal. Don't. Hey, great. Even more street cred for Diddy. Yeah, he'll probably come out and release an album about this. Freakoffs, freak out, outside the courthouse, baby oil, dripping down. Anyways, okay, NY. 11 months of jail is a big deal for someone like Diddy. I predict he gets time served. Even though he likely spent a fortune defending himself, he's going to make 3 times that now with his new album called Baby Oil Life. He will make 3x that now and further monetize. In my humble opinion, so much time passed. As far as I heard, these were consenting adults. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's how accurate that is, right? A lot of it seemed pretty coercive from what we heard. But if they're getting on airplanes and going back multiple times and, a lot of it's like buyer's remorse in the aftermath of it, it's like, all right. Yeah, it's not good. And the thing that the problem with this case is that they enabled this dude for like decades. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, he's a bad guy now. Like, what? You all had him on your shows. You all had him on your stages. You had him like the White House and stuff. Obama hanging out with him, like all of it. And now all of a sudden they're like, well, he's a monster and he's been committing a conspiracy for 20 years, racketeering. What? He was one of your people. From Waldo. So I just think there's something more to it. Waldo, what's up? Mendy Harris, great to have you. Mendy, welcome aboard, Mendy. Gifted a membo courtesy of Waldo. We got M.A. Allen in the house, 25 months as a membo. Says, hey, another amazing perky shirt podcast with facts. Yeah, this is a new shirt. It's, collar's nice and tight. Biceps are extra tight on this one, Right. Somebody made a small shirt comment the other day, and we all know what happens when those comments are made. And this is part of the repercussions. Hey, M.A. Allen, sun's out, guns out, baby. Robert is here to pump us up. That's right. We're starting the polo shirt revolution with extra shriveled bicep holes. This old guy, thank you, I'm an American man. This old guy, I don't think Clapper or Brennan received presidential pardons, so there's that. Yeah, what's the statute of limitations on those charges? Good to see you, this old guy. Thanks for the nice dono. What's up, Rick D? You'll appreciate this. Memphis PD in Tennessee got caught using blood test kits that had been expired for 3 years. That's just incredible. I did not see that story, but that is an interesting one. Yeah, Memphis PD in Tennessee. In Arizona, we had a huge DUI scandal where like the software was broken and they were just screwing up the software and still testing. Like, no, it's good. Like, you just move the graph in the computer code. Like, it's fine, though. It's where it's supposed to go. Tony Hay Muckets. I've seen a fireworks explosion. The whole building went up on a live stream. I haven't heard much about it. I don't know if anyone got hurt. Yeah, that might have been the one in California, right? I don't know much about it either. I think that there were people who were hurt. Yeah, but I don't know what happened there. Big firework explosion. Hey, Jump Iva in the house. Thank you, Jump Iva, for becoming a membo and joining us on YouTube. Stick around for the after party because we are going to come back and debrief with our membos here in just a minute. Steve Lee, what's up, Steve Lee? Thank you for being here for 11 months. Says, tap that like button. Lady Liberty, American Bald Eagle, and a thumbs up, courtesy of Steve Lee. Steve, almost 1 year anniversary to us. Almost happy anniversary to us. Thank you, Steve, for being a membo. And my friends, thank you for sending in these amazing donos. You guys rock. Welcome to new membo friends. Our plan now, members only after party. So if you are a membo and you want to join us and debrief for a bit, come check it out on YouTube. You're going to go back to the main channel homepage, refresh as soon as we wrap up here, and we'll see you on the after party. Locals, friends, just hang tight, and we'll be back very shortly. But it has been a beautiful stream. Happy Wednesday, my friends. I hope everything is unfolding nicely and beautifully for you. I appreciate you being here. Before we wrap up, I want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths. John and Donut Mind Me, modding the fort down for us. Carrie B, K Bean helping out. We got Neuro D, Dog Digger, and Janek. Big shout outs to Jigum, Elliot, and Just Rhonda, all modding the fort down for us, keeping things nice and orderly around here. We're very appreciative of them and of you. Thank you for being here. We're going to pause here. After party coming up, but my friends, it has been a beautiful stream. Tomorrow, we are coming back here to get into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through